Hello everyone, and welcome to this video going over the public test build that was released earlier this week. Now, I couldn't find specific patch notes for this public test build, so I just wanted to focus on the major map changes that are happening, because these map changes are very significant and will greatly change how survivor and killer chases work within them. A lot of you could even say these are huge nerfs to these maps because they have done a lot to remove a lot of safe areas for survivors. So I will be showing you guys several of the map changes. Now, before getting into this, I quickly want to share this image that the developers shared with us on their level design changes for the mid-chapter patch. So you can see here they have different categories, size or layout changes, type spacing changes, strong loop fix changes, tile tweaks changes, and window logic changes. Now, not all of these changes are easy to show you guys, so I'm just going to focus on the maps that had really important areas severely nerfed, such as Rancid Abattoir, Suffocation Pit, and Ironworks of Misery, and there's more than that. Those are just the few I'm listing right now. But you can just see the full list right here of what they changed on each map. But I will be focusing more on the strong loop fix changes because those maps are the ones that actually got physical adjustments that you can see more easily. So starting off with Ironworks of Misery here, right away you can see immediate change. Where the window originally was, there's now a doorway right here. Then they added a new window. And then they kind of pushed back where the pallet and treads were to create a new kind of pallet loop right next to the window. So it's the same pallet loop that was there before, just got pushed back. And this change does significantly alter how you would run this as a survivor, because the window is no longer a guaranteed safe window that forces the killer to vault it if they want to continue to chase you. Instead, the killer can just go around through the doorway that is now there. Additionally, that pallet loop is not as safe anymore because they pushed the pallet back and you only have the treads there, so it's not really that worthwhile as it was before. And you have the gap in the props allowing you to just run through. So they have made that part of Ironworks a lot more dangerous for survivors and a lot easier for killers to chase. Now, you can run it in an annoying way, but if the killer gets their bloodlust on you as a survivor, you won't have a chance, and a lot of killers will be able to counteract that loop more easily. Alright, and next up we have the Suffocation Pit. And I just want to give a big shout out to my friend Toddy Bacon Jr., who helped me see all these maps on the public test build so I wouldn't have to go through a bunch of real matches just trying to look at the map and getting chased by a killer, or just waiting forever in the killer queue times to get the map and having to use map offerings and relying on chance and all that nonsense. So I feel like on a lot of the maps they did an overhaul in the lighting or something, because the lighting does feel a little different. The ground looks brighter. But on the Suffocation Pit, they changed this area right next to the pit where that generator always spawns. And they really changed this in a significant way. They removed a lot of the props that used to be here, meaning that players are not kind of stuck in this C-shaped loop anymore because those boxes are no longer there. And it can make this area a lot more dangerous for survivors, because the killer has more ways to get to that generator and doesn't have to go all the way around a bunch of boxes to get to you. Overall, though, the rest of the map is pretty much the same with the jungle gym spawning, and thankfully, they have not altered Killer Shack yet. That is one thing I really hope the devs do not change, it's Killer Shack, because even though Killer Shack is really strong for survivors, personally I do not have a problem with it as killer myself, and I think survivors do deserve to have some tools against the killer. But anyways, yeah, rest of Suffocation Pit is pretty much the same. The only thing they changed was that area right next to the pit by moving around those boxes. Now we have the Groaning Storehouse, and this building did see a major change. They actually created a new entrance into the Groaning storehouse by destroying one of the windows that was previously there and making it a doorway in the back of the storehouse. So now you have 3 doorway entrances into the Groaning storehouse. Additionally, this new doorway has props next to it, meaning it tries to squish the survivors together, or the survivor and killer together, when you're running away from the killer, because these props are really close to the doorway. So it kind of makes it a kind of safe place. Like if you see the killer approaching from the outside, you have plenty of time to leave because you know the killer has to go around those props to get into the actual building. But be aware you can get stuck on those props as survivor or as killer, so be very cautious when running around there. Next, they have also added several props to the window that is the safest window in the Groaning storehouse. They put these props really close to the window, probably to make it more difficult to achieve the fast fault when you're coming from the outside of the storehouse, and also you just have to run around the props, which, while it doesn't sound difficult, it is more of an annoyance to do. These props that are near the window used to be way farther down from the window, nowhere near as close to the window as they are now. Now that will definitely impact chases in this area. And you see the props also kind of curve around the window too, so you can't just straight line chase around this window anymore. Your best bet is probably to still loop this window from the outside, because they also changed the inside of this window to have the boxes that were always there, but they removed one of the boxes. So now the survivor or killer can go left or right around the boxes, and you're not confined to just going in one direction, which can be a good and a bad thing, because it gives the killer more options to chase the survivor, and it gives survivors less safety. They also changed the positioning of this pallet here in the storehouse. This pallet used to be very close to the end of the shelves here. Now it is placed right smack dab in the middle of the shelves. And what this does is it actually makes the pallet way more dangerous. Because if you throw this pallet, you have to be pretty confident about which side the killer is coming from. If you're unsure of which side the killer is coming from and you throw the pallet, you will get stuck in the animation and the killer will down you. So now this pallet is no longer safe, and I highly suggest you never camp this pallet, and do your best to not use this pallet because it's a pallet that's going to get you killed, guaranteed. Next up we have the Thompson house, and the Thompson house, they actually made this map slightly smaller overall because it was a pretty big map, and they also changed some of the tiling spawn rules for this map because there's a lot more tree tiles spawning, at least in this instance of the map, here. You practically never got tree tiles really on the Thompson house. Usually you only got at least one tree tile kind of next to Killer Shack, and you wouldn't really get tree tiles anywhere else on this map. So this is an interesting change. You can have pallets within these tree tiles, but again, you can also not have pallets in these tree tiles like here. But the biggest change here will be to the Thompson house itself, and they actually added a window on the second story. Now pretty much everything else in the house is the same except the props in the rooms. They actually modified the props in the rooms, where this one room I'm in now, you can see instead of basically splitting the room in two where you can only go around the props to go to the doorway, they actually remove some of the props so you can go to the doorway by going to the left or right of the props. And then in this room that's always next to the chest, they actually removed all the props entirely. So nowhere for survivors to really hide anymore on the Thompson house or try to juke the killer out up here. And I think this is because they added the window. Since they added the window, survivors do not need those props up there as much. Even though if the killer went up there in the past, it was like a guaranteed hit for the killer because you couldn't really get downstairs unless you really outplayed the killer without getting hit. But this window right here is actually going to be a very powerful window for survivors, especially if you have balanced landing. that window is going to be so strong. So this actually creates a safer environment for survivors and a more difficult environment for killers. Because if you're the killer, you have to decide, do you want to vault the window, or do you want to go down the stairs and continue to chase them? If you vault the window, the survivor can just loop you by going back up to Thompson House and vaulting the window again, allowing you to vault that window 3 times without getting hit. Or if the killer decides to go down the stairs, well, you just run away to a jungle gym, and then you can eventually loop your way back into the house, take the window again. So I think Thompson House window this is going to be very strong for survivors. Really good change here, because I always thought they should have a window or something up there, because it seemed unfair that if you do the generator in Thompson House, it's incredibly risky. If the killer goes up there, he's practically guaranteed to hit you. So I bet we're going to be seeing a lot more survivors spending time in Thompson House now that it has turned into the safest building on this map. Moving on with our Cold Wind farms today, we have the Rancid Abattoir. The devs definitely made this map a lot bigger. It does not feel as small as it used to, and it just feels like there's a lot more space in general on this map. Especially as you look at the main building, you can notice you're much farther away from it than you were before. And yeah, just a lot of space, more room for other kinds of tiles and stuff like that. But if you go in the abattoir yourself, you'll see this is where the majority of the changes are for this map. They actually created a doorway here, and what was once the safest window in this entire map is no longer so. So they removed these railings, so basically the killer could just chase you, and the railings are positioned in such a way that it is impossible to get a fast vault from inside the abattoir. You can only get a fast vault from the outside of the abattoir, and this window is nowhere near as safe as it once was, especially with the doorway there allowing the killer easy access to the outside, and the removal of the props and kind of pathway that you used to have. Now, I think they did not have to make this loop that weak. They could have kept some of the railings there, in my opinion, since they do have the doorway there now. It is what it is, and it remains to be seen if these are just variants. Like, maybe sometimes the doorway is a window and the window is the doorway. Although Dead by Daylight hasn't really done that in particular in the past. Usually doorways and windows do not switch spots. So Rancid Abattoir building is no longer really a safe area to run, although the other window is still pretty strong that has the hay in front of it, because you can go to a pallet loop from there. But this other window, if you're doing the generator, you can probably get to it before the killer can hit you, but you do not want to loop through the inside of Abattoir just because you cannot get that fast vault. Instead, you want to try to loop the opposite direction where you get the fast vault from the outside of Abattoir. Although that could be hard if you do not curve your vault correctly. Our next Cold Wind Farm map here is Torment Creek, and this map is very famous for having one of the most powerful windows in the game, and now we can see that the developers have gotten rid of that window, which is a little sad to see because it has a lot of good memories for me, but also a lot of frustrating ones. But, I mean, I don't think this window really was a problem since they introduced the random blocked window, but I guess they wanted to balance it some more. So, the strong window in this main building here is no more. It is now a doorway, and instead of having all that hay outside the doorway, they actually have a brand new pallet loop here. Now the problem is that since they allow killers to go straight across around the hay, that pallet loop isn't really that safe as you would think it would be. If they actually kept the hay blocking, like right as you get out the doorway, instead of having that open space there, that would be a safe pallet. But instead, they removed the hay there, so it's a short and kind of dangerous pallet, because especially killers that can have stealth or hide their red stain really easily, they can mind game you. So that's it is what it is. I think it would have been just fine if they made it a safe palette by just not letting the killer or survivor really go straight through the hay, because once you use a palette, it's gone forever and it's not really useful anymore. And I think that would actually be a really great palette for Freddy's fake palettes or Doctor's illusionary palettes, where survivors would think the palette's still there or still down, and so then they would just run straight to it. And since there's nowhere else for them to go, because it would be blocked by hay, it would be an easy down for the killer or easy hit for the killer. But instead, they decided to opt with this new loop outside that doorway. But again, it is what it is, and this is the public test build, although I'm pretty sure they're not going to change anything. Really, they're probably going to keep everything the same as it is. The only thing they're going to change is if an area is bugged and you can't go through it because of hitbox issues. Now I'm moving on to the Autohaven Wreckers maps, starting with the Wretched Shop because I know this is another map with a beloved building here. So let's see how they are nerfing this one. So we still got the same thing there, and it looks like they're just limiting the window spawns here to only one window because those 3 windows were all blocked. The reason I'm looking at this map is because they said there is a strong loot fix in here. So maybe that's what they mean by it, is that they're basically only having one window open on the Wretched Shop, because everything else here looks pretty much the same. They probably just readjusted some of the props around the shop as well. Well, this is a short one for Wretched Shop. They did not make any new doorways or windows. They just are gonna keep only one window open in the shop at all times, I assume. Which, you just hope it's not the stupid window by this door, because the killer, it doesn't really give you any opportunity to escape, which wasn't really needed, but whatever. Now in the devs notes, they made a mention of Wrecker's Yard, so I just wanted to check it out to see what they meant by it. And we still have the same layout here with the killer shack in the middle, but I think they made this map a tiny bit bigger, or at least increased the spacing, because it definitely feels like there's more spacing here. Just going around here, they actually changed a lot of the jungle gym spawning as well, it seems. I feel like I've never ever had a generator in the rocks at the very back of Wrecker's Yard. I always feel like the very back and front of Wrecker's Yards always has 2 jungle gyms next to each other. So that's kind of weird to see for the first time. Rocks on that side instead of a jungle gym. And this bus is way in the corner of the map. So they really changed up the spawning of this Wrecker's Yard, at least. That's what I get from my first impression here. But they did not change anything about the tiles. Next we have Temple of Purgation. The ground looks way shinier than it did before. Oh my. I feel like it'd be really easy to chase survivors then, but that's a very, very shiny ground right here. And they didn't they said they made size or layout changes, I believe, on this one. Let me double check. So they have size or layout and type spacing changes. But I did notice some changes in the main building here. In the main building in the upstairs area, there is no longer a window, so it's basically just a dead end up there. So if I were you, once the patch comes out, just check the upstairs area, see if there's a window or not, but it's most likely going to be a dead end now. It's not sure if it's always guaranteed to not have the window anymore, but it doesn't have the window on this one. It only has the drop, which is only useful if you have balance landing. And another change here to the main building is they added this doorway, or they didn't really so much add a doorway as they separated this doorway from the other one. So the killer actually has to go around if they see you from the front of the building. But other than that, not really too much has changed on this map. And last we have Bottom Preschool, which they said they made some strong loot fixes to and other adjustments. But I didn't really see anything too different about the Bottom Preschool, So I don't know if they meant that for one of the specific variations. of Bottom Preschool. You still got the pallet spawn in the preschool. The basement looks the same. Maybe they just changed some of the pallet spawning rules here. But yeah, the preschool pretty much looks the same. Maybe they made this fence a little bit shorter. I mean, it's hard to tell. But it's possible. I don't really get bottom that much myself to recognize the length of the fence. But they said they did a strong loop fix on this map, so there's definitely a change somewhere, or maybe just not on this variation of it. And there you have it. Now, I did not cover every map, unfortunately, so I did not cover the Fractured Cowshed, which also got a loop fix. I imagine it got a new doorway as well, because that's what they did with, since that is what they did with Torment Creek. And I know Fractured Cowshed is known for having a plethora of windows in the barn, so I can see them turning some of those windows into a doorway, or at least one window into a doorway, and rearranging some props on that map. And the second map I forgot to cover was Coal Tower, which also got a strong loop fix and tile tweaks. So I imagine that they made Coal Tower probably a bigger map, because Coal Tower was another small map, so I can see them expanding that map some more. And they probably either made another doorway as well in the Coal Tower, or they rearranged props to make things more dangerous. I am sorry I did not give footage of these two maps, because I spent hours going through all the maps with my good friend, and I guess I just forgot about these two in particular. Plus, I was having a lot of issues getting my game into the PTB, and just a lot of craziness that would make you forget these small details. So I apologize for not having those two maps, but I can give you my opinion on them when they do release to the live build. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to Toddy Bacon Jr. for helping me get these recorded for you so I could make this video for all of you to enjoy, just talking about the changes to these maps. Now, there are going to be probably other changes in the mid-chapter patch, but I could not find the patch notes, because I think they are doing their patch notes in a new way now, and the only things I could find was the 3.6 point whatever hot fixes. I could not find the 3.7 mid-chapter patch notes. So I don't know if they just forgot to post them, or they're not releasing patch notes for public test builds anymore. But I could only find the developer, the developer update and what they said on that. I imagine it's possible they could tweak some perks as well, tweak some killer powers. Probably going to be tweaking the Deathslinger a little bit, because that's usually what their goal is with mid-chapter patches, is to balance the new killer or a survivor. But you guys wanted me to make a video on the public test build, and so I endured and I did it all for you. And now you can see all the maps, or at least the maps I showed, since I forgot two of them. But it gives you an idea of what changes would be on those other two maps as well. Anyways, let me know what you think of these map changes in the comments below. Do you think they're too strong, too weak now? Do you think they're necessary, or do you think they're unnecessary? I feel like Thompson House definitely needed that window, but I think that's going to make it harder for killers to catch survivors up there. And the map changes are good to see, but I think the developers are just a little too worried now about having safe areas for survivors. They pretty much made all these areas very unsafe for survivors, excluding Thompson House, really. And they're doing their best to make these areas more dangerous for survivors. So then it's well, if you take away all this, then what will survivors have? And I'm sure survivors will do just fine with these changes. They may not like it, but you still have your jungle gyms and pallet loops, and you just have to run these areas differently than before. You just have to reanalyze these maps, have various plans for what you will do if the killer does decide to chase you, since a lot of these areas are no longer going to be the safe havens they used to be. Anyways, that's enough of me talking. I'm pretty sure I've gone on long enough about these maps to make some good content for you guys. And time to move on to the outro. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like if you found this video informative, and subscribe for more Dead by Daylight content. And quickly, also liking the video lets me know that you enjoy this type of video, and if I know that you enjoy this type of video, I am more likely to make more of these kinds of videos in the future, because I want to put my time and effort in things that you guys want to watch. Now, as always, good luck out there in the fog, and see ya next time.